Make sure everything's good. All right. YouTube. Excellent connection. Perfect.
This connection doesn't work so good on my TV.
YouTube's good. All live and sounding pretty. And Facebook.
YouTube's good.
Facebook's all good, sounding pretty. So we are live.
Awesome.
So welcome back to episode 8
Here we are.
of Whitetails and Whiskey. 2 months in already to this, and not quite a month into deer season yet.
Nope.
But got some good stories and conversation and everything going forward with this episode. Got a new guest tonight, Keith, sitting right over here.
Nice to be here.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. And we want to do more of this going forward, having viewers and friends and other stuff come on to the podcast and talk about what they got going on, what they're seeing, all that good stuff to bring other perspectives in on it.
Some different experiences out in the woods for sure.
Absolutely. So, whiskey of the night, we always start off with that. This is Keith's recommendation is Bullet, is our whiskey tonight for our Whitetails and Whiskey episode 8. So we'll grab a little bit of that. And while I'm doing that, Keith, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Keith Burley. I'm from Gorham, New York. Grew up in Gorham pretty much my whole life. And this is only my second full season of whitetail hunting. Second season as an adult. I started whitetail hunting when I was 15 with a gun and a bow. Did it for 2 years and then basically got back into it last year. So it's been a huge learning experience. Still a lot to learn. These guys have been helping me out a lot with the basics. Getting back into archery this past summer has been a really good experience. So I don't have a lot of experience whitetail hunting, but I enjoy the heck out of it, and I'm really eager to learn more from Ben, from Nate, the rest of the guys that I surround myself with. So
pick up anything.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm enjoying hearing from these guys, especially about getting more in depth into whitetail hunting and what it's all about, and kind of broadening my horizons with that. So enjoyable.
Perfect. And you hunt this area mainly?
Gorham, Rushville. Yep. So my family farm is about 50 acres that I hunt, have it all to myself. Really fortunate with that. And then I just got access to 120 acres in Rushville that's a mile from my house. So it's right down the road from the Marcus Whitman High School. So that's been enjoyable, learning a lot, setting stands, cameras, learning where the deer are going, what's going on. Still a lot to learn for sure, but having access to that land this year is a game changer for sure. So
Awesome.
yeah, excited about that.
And that's something that not a lot of podcasts and stuff like that I think really touch on is some of the newer hunters that don't have a whole lot of experience in what they're kind of learning and seeing and kind of the development process. I think that's something that's overlooked by a lot of people.
That's me.
No,
honestly, it's but the cool part is it's fun to learn. It's fun to have new experiences in the woods. I mean, I texted you guys the other day. I got to learn, but every time I go out, I learn something new. So it's a cool way to approach it. I think I try to be as positive as I can, even when I have negative experiences. But live and learn and move on to the next hunt.
Yeah, you'll never learn from. You'll learn more, I should say, from a negative experience than you will a positive experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone needs to have a little humbling moment to understand a little better, get a little better grasp. Then,
for sure, absolutely.
I think that's definitely how it works.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely how it works.
No. So all right. So for the whiskey of the night, like we were saying, is Bullet. So gave everybody a little schwaggle. Cheers.
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 That's good stuff.
Not bad.
Nope, not a bad one.
Good
Absolutely.
pick, Ben?
Yeah, no, definitely got that rye. Definitely get a lot of rye with that one.
Yeah.
So if you're a big rye guy, I mean, that touches a lot to like old granddad,
Okay.
stuff like that. Similar kind of taste is what I pick up on. Just not quite as high test as
Yeah.
granddad bonded,
Smooth.
which is my dad's go-to is granddad bonded. So I've had plenty of that in my lifetime with it. So
I was telling Ben earlier I got a bottle of this for my 30th birthday, and I think it lasted 3 weeks. it didn't last long,
good.
so
Yeah.
it was a good 30th birthday present for sure. So
yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah, it actually goes down pretty smooth.
yeah.
Like I touched on before, I'm not a huge whiskey guy, but I do enjoy it from time to time, and that's pretty smooth.
Yeah.
We'll get you converted by the end of the
Yeah, we will.
the podcast and stuff like that. But yeah. So since we last been on, I mean, we've been on this wicked warm snap, and I know I haven't been hunting much. You know, during that warm snap, we talked about that last podcast. Not really, you know, burning out your good spots and stuff like that. So I guess we'll go around. I have had a couple sits. You know, more just observation sits, long range sits, spots that obviously you can kill out of, but not sit in my high priority stands, which we'll talk about when I'm going to be starting to sit those. But what have you been doing, Nate, with the last week or so with this big warm up that we've had since last episode?
Well, went back to work Monday after my leave with the new baby and everything. So kind of the warm snap was a little bit of a blessing for me. I guess, you know, a lot of hunters might look at it differently. But to get back in the swing of, you know, this new life with the baby and getting back acclimated with work and adjusting to all that, it's been kind of nice the past few days. I did kind of reach out to you and mentioned to you that it would be a good opportunity to maybe throw a few rounds through the rifles and shotguns for, you know, just get that out of the way, make sure they're dialed in for the upcoming gun season. And we did do a little bit of that today.
Yep.
So that was a good opportunity to do that. Yeah, just kind of getting back acclimated with life and doing little things here and there and getting ready for this front rolling in.
Yep, absolutely. Keith, what about you with the warm up?
Ooh, well, I actually went out on one of those 70-degree nights because I didn't feel like sitting at home.
You
And
never know.
I text our group there, hey, who's going on? I think I was the only one that went out. But I didn't see anything, but it was enjoyable to be out in the woods. It was a beautiful day. Again, I learned something new every time I go out. So that's something I learned on my own. I'm not going out when it's that warm. But I was going out in the mornings when it was cool. We had a couple cool mornings that I went out and had some really good mornings where I saw a bunch, just not within range, not where they really needed to be. And then, but also on the other hand, saw a bunch of mistakes I made, setting stands, you know, not being in the right position of where I should be. So, like I said, learning something new each and every time I've gone out. So,
No,
I mean,
these are new. Like, you're new to these properties. Maybe not the family farm, but
so the family farm I'm pretty familiar with. This is my third year there. Second year archery season. I went on a little in gun season. My brother-in-law set some stands. We only had one decent spot there 3 years ago. So I put a stand in a new spot this year based on data that I had from last year. And I really didn't do enough homework preseason to understand what was around me. And actually, I made a big mistake and put a new stand where I had a lot of activity last year, there was corn 60 yards away, and this year it's a full-blown 40-acre cabbage field. So I'm setting the stand. I'm all excited.
Change things.
I'm all excited. We had great deer on camera there last year. You know, really excited to get a stand there. I knew it was going to be a good spot. Get the stand set, get up in the stand, start clearing some stuff. When I look up and shit. It's all cabbage, you know.
Okay.
Well, like I said, live and learn, and I won't do that again, you know.
Yeah.
So adjusted some stands this year, moved some cameras around, and I had corn all around my parents' property last year. Every single field was corn. Now it's 2 soybean fields that are now tilled up, and then the cabbage field. So it's completely changed deer movement of what they're doing. They're bedding in the same areas, but they're not feeding in the same areas, obviously. So it's changed quite a bit. So
You gotta pay attention to the crop rotation.
yeah,
It's pretty common
mm-hmm.
if you're not familiar for
Oh,
a farmer to go from
mhm.
corn to beans every other year.
And I'm a farmer. I've been a farmer my whole life. I just honestly didn't think about it. Just one of those mistakes that I won't make again.
There's a lot to think of.
You know.
Yeah.
There's a
They're
lot to
just-
No,
consider.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
so at my family farm, just quick runoff here. They run horses through the trails. So they have actual horse trails that are maintained. They're graded off. They're York raked. They're mowed, and there's horses out there almost every day.
Mhm.
And there's probably 5 or 6 horses, every couple days, and the deer don't care.
No, they don't mind horses.
They don't care. So I got really upset Sunday of the mistake I made with that stand, and I moved the stand. And I moved the stand, and I'm like, it's not a great move, but I'm moving it. And I moved it Sunday afternoon, and I put a camera there 12 yards from the stand, and there's been deer there every day since. Which I wasn't expecting to see because like Ben was telling me, it's intrusive. It's pressure, but I was blown away that there's deer there every night, every afternoon, and most mornings. So
Sometimes, I mean, you set a camera up, and sometimes if you just take that camera and you just put it to the other side of the tree, might be the same spot, but
Yep.
that camera's you got to think that camera's not going to catch everything.
No.
That camera's only going to catch so much. So I mean,
Yeah.
even if you just take that camera and you just turn it around the other side of the tree for a week and see what your results are, you might
Yeah.
actually be surprised at the deer moving or where it was. Just
Oh
your camera wasn't pointing in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But pay attention to sign and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So it's only part into the season, but so far it's been a huge learning curve for me so far. Way more than it was last year.
Mhm.
I think I had a lot of luck on my side last year with corn being all around me, and
I do think corn helps.
corn. I think it does, and just in my short experience, but it's been way different. Especially in the last week and a half, they've tilled all the beans under, so there's nothing in the fields. It's just dirt.
Well, if they do that usually means they're going to plant a cover crop. So if they plant it to triticale or something, you might have something that the deer are going to munch on. Here.
They'll probably do winter wheat.
Winter wheat's good, and
is what they'll rotate to,
they'll
so.
haul the deer in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll see.
Yeah, right.
We'll see what happens. So it's been interesting so far, for sure.
Yeah. So with that crop rotation thing, I mean, it's usually it can be pretty cyclic.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
if you're looking at corn bean, but cabbage in some of these areas, especially where we are in some of the areas we hunt in Ontario County, cabbage is actually a pretty big crop that gets rotated in, and I don't see a whole heck of a lot of deer usage
No.
on cabbage.
So it's funny you say that. So I said my stepfather grows sweet corn and cabbage.
Mhm.
And the farm that grows it is right next to our horse farm. So I told him, I said, I made a huge mistake and put that stand next to the cabbage field. He goes, that's not a bad thing. What are you talking about? They got corn. They have cabbage up near one of the sweet corn fields that they drive by every morning, and he cuts cabbage in there. And he had about an acre and a half of cabbage ruined by deer.
Interesting.
But it was when it was young. When it's
Gotcha.
not so tough, when it's, a little bit, easier,
Mhm.
a little softer. So once it gets to the mature state, I don't think much is going on there myself.
Yeah, I guess I really hunted around a whole lot of cabbage, but I'm sure. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with anything when the plant first starts growing and it's nice and tender, and the deer seem to be drawn to it, and then once it gets older and a little tougher, the deer kind of fade away from it as long as they have a different food source around.
Right.
Yeah. Right. No,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely. But no, so other than that, like I said, I mean, the silage, I mean, everybody's got silage cut. We got crops coming off, silage is being cut, beans are getting finished up and going under.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking to the point where it's shucked corn, right? That was our top
Yeah,
shelled.
shell corn.
Shelled.
You shuck sweet corn.
Gotcha.
Shucking is when you
All right.
Come on, Ben, we're getting there.
I know. I'm learning, dude. I never.
Yeah, so shell corn's probably a month out, like in my area, anyways.
Yep. So getting closer to Thanksgiving time frame, stuff like that.
Yeah, and then some of it in our area will even go right into December
Or January.
Yeah.
Where like Nate shot his buck last year, was on a field that hadn't been harvested yet.
We have farms in our field that leave the corn until spring.
Yeah, they're around.
And it'll lay there in the field all winter. So
helps feed the wildlife.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that big thing is if you don't have the ability to control, crops on your piece of property, is understanding what food sources they're shifting to in your neighborhood.
Yep.
Is key for a lot of people, rather than if it was beans and the beans are gone, throw in the towel. Well, it might be, you got a good little browse pocket where the farmer cut some timber the last couple of years and you got a good browse pocket that the deer are keying on, or like you said, winter wheat going in behind beans, triticale going in behind beans, stuff like that you can key up on the next food source in your area and start to try to figure out how that's going to slot into how the deer are going to move on it. Don't give up. I mean, be willing and be able to be, flexible with your next move with it. You're not always as, fortunate to have, like a manicured food plot or something like that where, you got the ability to have control of what crops going in at what time. A lot of times it's landowners, and it just kind of comes back to, your boots on the ground, your scouting, and then comes down to your woodsmanship ability to be able to, get it done and understand that stuff. So sure. I think that's huge for guys.
I like a little bit of what Keith touched on there. With, we're into third week of bow season, and he's talking about, I didn't like where my stand was. I'm just going to go move it. Some people can look at that as a bad thing. Some people might look at it as doesn't matter. I guess I can kind of see both sides of it. Me personally, the ground that I hunt, I've been hunting it for a few years, so my spots are pretty set. I kind of have a fairly good idea of deer movement from year to year, crop rotation, weather, and then with my cameras, the intel I get from them. But I don't really think it's a bad thing. I mean, I think a lot of these guys are going mobile and being successful. I think going in there and moving a stand because you think you're going to have a better shot at being successful, I don't think you'd be super intrusive, as long as you're not dragging that stand through the bedding area and plopping it up right in the middle of where they want to sleep and mainly hang out. I don't think that would affect much at all.
Yeah, so I had a morning sit and had 4 hours to think about what I was going to do and how I was going to do it, and where the wind was, what was going on. And I'm fortunate that I have a side-by-side to use that is in the woods all the time. So I was able to get the stand down, get it apart, load it on the side-by-side, take it to where I was going, get it on the ground, set it up, get it up, without being overly intrusive. Yeah, it's fairly intrusive, but like what I was mainly thinking about is these deer hear this machine all the time. They see things in the woods as far as the horses and people, so I could have been in a worse situation.
Yeah, well, they're curious on average anyways. You really do anything in the woods. I mean, you go set a camera up, and I bet that night you'll have at least one deer checking it out. Yeah. I don't care how scent free you are or whatever. Someone's going to figure out that you were around there, and they're going to check it out, and they're going to sniff it out.
See what's going on.
So I'm sure when you moved that stand, you had some curiosity going on, like what was going on around here earlier today. And, it's just like what you're doing going in there, moving the stands around. You're in there trying to figure them out. Well, they're doing the same thing to you with everything you do in the woods. They're going around like, okay, wait a minute. This is different. Let me go check this out. Why is this here? What's this doing? They're doing the same thing.
Yeah,
they're trying to figure you out.
Yeah.
That's why they call it a chess game.
Yep. Yeah. No, absolutely.
No, it's really cool you say that, because I've never looked at it with that perspective. That's
if
really
I went
cool
into your house and I took your recliner and I moved it to the opposite corner of the living room, you're gonna come home and be like, "What's going on with that? Why is my recliner over there?" I mean, it's kind of the same thing. You go into the woods, you cut a tree down.
Yeah.
I bet you within 24 hours you got deer roaming around that tree.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this thing down?
Right.
You know?
Never looked at it
Absolutely.
that way.
It's their house. It's where they live.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're in their domain.
Yep.
You're in their playing field when you're out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just trying to beat them at it.
But again, like I said, if you're trying to figure out a piece, trying to learn a piece, stuff like that, and you see a difference in movement, you know, I like at the same time, if you can get the stand moved effectively, I wouldn't hesitate to do that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not where you need to be, you know, there's some times where you need to, you know, pick up sticks and move a little bit and figure out, you know, or get closer to where you see them working a place,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just to, you know, increase that success with it. Because otherwise, you know, you sit back there a couple hundred yards from where you might have moved it from, and you just go, well, I should have moved it there. And then you see a nice deer walk by, and you're like, yeah, I definitely should have moved it there.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing that difference in, you know, deer movement patterns, you know, change of food sources, stuff like that, the way they're using a place, and if you can move a stand effectively, you know, like Nate said, a lot of guys are going mobile now with, you know, sticks and stands and everything else. You know, there's always merit and option to that stuff, but for most of my private parcel pieces, I like having, you know, prepped and established stand locations.
Yeah.
But again, these are properties that, like you said, you figure out for, you know, 2, 3 years, 4 years, you know, to really fine tune those spots. And it might be you move it after season, but if you want and have the opportunity to move it during season, I'd see no harm in that if you can do it effectively and, you know, with as minimal intrusion as possible. Like you said, something's going to happen, but you know, at some point you got to figure out if it's going to be worth the movement to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just didn't want to lose any opportunities to have
Right.
a shot opportunity. You know,
Mhm.
where I was, it wasn't presenting. It wasn't on the cameras. It wasn't when I was sitting there. So like my perspective was, what am I doing sitting here investing this time, energy, money to not have any results?
Right.
And we've all been there. That's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence is a big part of what we do out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're not feeling confident, you're not even really going to go out.
No,
Yeah.
sure.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if you know, if that stand movement or whatever gives you that extra confidence to get you out there, I mean, bottom line is 100% no one ever really knows what they're going to see when they go out there.
Yeah.
You know, you might go out there anticipating to see 12, 13 deer walk by you one morning and you see nothing. Then there's that day you're like, it's kind of warm out, whatever. I don't know. It's probably not the best thing, but I got nothing going on. Screw it.
Mm-hmm.
You decide to go out there and you're like, Jesus, I saw like 5 deer today.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's happened to me more than once.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
For sure. So
It's hunting, not killing.
yeah. There's a reason they call it hunting, right?
But yeah, I had a comment come in on the Facebook line. My dad commented in, says cabbage fields equals outlaw food plots. So, for people that might be tuning in and stuff like that don't know, I talk about them quite a bit. The outlaw plots is with obviously farmer, landowner permission, everything like that, broadcasting a crop into an established ag field. When those crops are finishing off and stuff like that, and they're not pulling any more nutrient from the soil, using something like an annual type crop in those situations to overseed into farmer fields. I know Nate did it this year with some of the brassica species and stuff like that in a couple of his spots. I've done it historically with fast-growing brassicas, forage brassica types, and cereal grains into mostly standing soybeans. But cabbage field, I guess I've never.
There's a lot of open ground around a cabbage plant. So
There is a lot of open ground around
it
cabbage.
would get a lot of sun. That would kind of make sense.
Yep.
That you could do that.
And
Yep.
all the cabbage in our area is hand picked every head. None of it's machine picked. So they're running in there with massive tractors with totes on the back and
Tossing them in head by head.
Tossing them in literally head by head. The challenge I have with that is the owner of that farm is one of the biggest whitetail hunters I know, and
Right.
his land is his to hunt, which I respect. That's his to hunt, and
So you're saying he's one of those guys that's less likely going to grant you permission to go out there and spread some
for sure,
spread some
food
food around
and
for you to attract some deer.
So I mean, it would be a conversation I could have, but it wouldn't be a conversation that I would expect to.
Never hurts to ask.
Exactly. For
You
sure.
never
But
know.
so I've never heard of that term.
Nope.
I've never heard of that procedure before. So thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. That's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, it's
It's fairly new to me. Ben brought that up to me the past couple of years, and I finally did it a little bit with his seed blend he put together.
Yeah.
And, it did. It sprouted. I spread it in some beans. It sprouted.
it's on your lawn.
And every time he shows up, there's seed falling out of his truck. I got turnips growing in my yard.
You can come over to my yard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I punted over it a couple times or once since the beans been off, and I haven't had any action coming into it. I think it's probably going to be a little more productive later in the year as we get colder and the food resources kind of dwindle a little bit.
Mhm.
Kind of concentrate the deer in the area a little more to that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, which this year has been kind of a little bit of a blessing for people that's gotten their food plots in later or outlaw plots because of this warm weather and not having a killing frost yet to knock stuff back. That your plots can get a little bit more age under them and stuff like that. The only again downside to that is some of the native vegetation stuff like that, hayfields, some of that stuff is not tapering off or dropping off. So there's still a lot of food out on the landscape as a whole right now. Still, just because we haven't had those hard frosts to knock back the native food buffet, so to speak.
on, like we were saying, I mean, it's also dependent on where you hunt. I mean, where we hunt, there's so much agricultural land and farmers. I mean, there's throughout the summer to, early winter or harvest time, October, November, early December, it's there's a ton of food out there for the deer.
Yep.
So to actually put a food plot in and have it be successful, it's definitely possible, but it's definitely a little more difficult, I feel like, in this area because of the abundance of food for the deer with the long, I guess,
growing season
of the farmer's crops.
And just the timing of harvest between the beans and the early corn for corn silage and then moving on to the shell corn. And then like where I hunt at my parents', we have a 15.5 acre hayfield. And it's mostly Timothy, a little bit of alfalfa, and just what we call horse hay. So what I'm noticing now is they're hitting that hayfield hard. They're really hitting it hard because predominantly all around our farm, except one field, is only that one field is corn. So they're really the does that have stuck to our farm and haven't really moved off the farm are really hitting that hayfield hard, and that's where I'm seeing them sitting and stand every time I see them. And my mom watches them from the house because they're in the field so much because it's a rolling field in the back of the house. You can see almost the whole field. So, like Ben was saying, not having that frost, they're loving it.
Yeah, I mean they're, as I think we touched on before, is how their diets change. They go from more of a green diet to more of a granular diet, and they're definitely hitting the green stuff pretty hard right now. I think they're rolling into switching over to the granular stuff here as the temperatures drop and the foliage dies off and everything, and they'll definitely be looking more for the grains and the nuts and stuff like that later on.
Yep. Yeah, and woody browse pockets.
In November.
Yep, absolutely. Which again, by now, I mean, usually our frost date's probably first, if not, maybe the second week of October. So, we missed it, and it looks like we're gonna miss it for at least another week.
Yeah.
So, but so it's gonna make some challenges. I mean, every year is gonna be different, but we haven't had that good killing frost in probably 3 or 4 years now. Relatively on schedule. So, that makes the food more spread out. It's going to spread deer out a little bit more. But when you get those conditions, if you have that food source that's going to pull through it or concentrate through it, a timbered area with a browse pocket in it, maybe a food plot, farmer's corn that didn't get cut for whatever, didn't get harvested for whatever reason yet, they're going to turn to a lot of those things as being the best food in the neighborhood. Now, right now, it's still pretty spread out. So, but it's coming.
Yeah, definitely. I think in our area, Finger Lakes. I think it's definitely, you get into that early December, early or late November, definitely, you definitely start to see a little more deer activity around those granular, and I guess nut trees and any standing beans.
Yeah.
Or beans right now, when they brown off, beans are kind of funny because early when they're green, deer love them.
Yep.
And then they turn brown, and there's so much more green vegetation around, the deer just kind of turn away from them as they brown off. And then as the seasons roll on and it gets colder and all that vegetation dries off, the deer need to switch back to a more granular diet. And obviously they need protein, which bean is very high in protein. So you get more towards that late gun season, muzzleloader season. You got any standing beans around you, I would try and sit around them.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you
They're gonna be
can.
looking for that protein to,
So I noticed something last weekend in a sit in an afternoon stand down on this creek bed, and where I sit is about 150, 200 yards east of where they bed down, and I'm kind of in a little pocket, like low spot, in this creek bed, and it's about 25, 30 feet up into a cornfield, and the deer coming from where they're bedding, they're running up to that corn, and they're not even going in the corn. They're running up the brush line in between the brush and the corn. There's like 6-8 foot, buffer zone for the combine head. They're running up that corn to the hayfield, and I can hear them coming and watch them. It's only 40 yards away, and then they're going right into that hay. So, perhaps when that hay gets burned off, then they're going to turn to that. So that's great knowledge for me, because I didn't really look at it that way that much. But the other night I was sitting there, I'm like, why aren't these deer going in this corn? It's right there. It's right next to their bedding area. But instead they're going to that green, easy eat food source.
It's more palatable for them.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you had a choice to eat a nice, juicy piece of lettuce or a dried up bean,
there you go.
What are you gonna do?
For sure.
But then when it comes down to it, when it comes down to them colder temperatures and everything, and they're looking for some food, they want that high protein stuff, stuff that's gonna
need those carbs,
help
that,
maintain weight, help them, give them something that they can use energy.
Yeah, but no, that's definitely something. And again, on a typical October or fall, that hay might be, done by now.
Yeah.
This year in the last couple of years, kind of been more of seems like the normal as of late. But at some point, I got to figure it's gonna, turn back to normal with kind of the way the weather patterns go.
Right.
Within reason. But
right.
If you look out through history, you do have these warm couple years and spells and stuff like that. But like we were saying, today at work it was 70-some degrees again today for like the third or fourth straight day. Gorgeous working weather to get stuff done this last week, which I took full advantage of. But we got a front rolling in right now, and if you haven't been in a tree yet, or if you have time to get in a tree these next few days, a lot of deer are going to hit the ground, especially going into this late October pre-rut time frame for our region. I think this is your like flashing lights. This is your sit alert for you guys right now.
Between tomorrow, I'm not sure when it ends, but I'm thinking Sunday. I think Monday it starts warming up again.
Yeah.
But between now and Sunday, put as many hours as possible. If you can do an all-day sit, even if you get bored in one stand, just get up, move to another according that's adjustable to the wind, just to kind of keep it in the woods. It's tough for me to sit all day. I'm a fidgety guy. I got to sit there and chew gum, like spearmint gum, the entire time I'm in the stand, because I almost feel like I constantly got to be doing something with my hands. It's something I struggled with my whole life. But definitely put as much time as you possibly can in from Thursday to Sunday. And I've always wanted to kill a Halloween buck, and I got a good feeling.
My first buck,
Maybe.
my first deer with a bow was last Halloween.
You got one on Halloween?
Halloween, yeah.
That's always cool.
Yeah, so Halloween morning, yeah, it was pretty neat. So.
Yeah. No, I've never killed on Halloween. I've seen, I've had sits and stuff on Halloween, and this year it falls on that Monday. Right when Nate says it's going to ramp back up again into the high 60s, 70s again next week. But if we kind of stay on this roller coaster pattern, where we're at kind of with the weather temps right now, like I said, this next, tomorrow morning, Friday morning, Saturday morning, I mean, you're looking at tomorrow morning 43, Friday morning 32, Saturday morning 33, Sunday morning 37. I mean, that's what we want, man. That's late October, early November.
And we're getting them cooler temperatures with that northerly wind.
Yeah, we get a north wind actually right now.
We're getting more of that optimal wind.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely.
It's funny. I was looking at the app Gary mentioned, the group text, that Spartan Forge, and I've been using that to watch wind.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna have something very strange. I don't see much in our area as an east wind.
Had a lot of east this year. And much east.
I don't see. Our farm used to be called West Wind Farm, and there's a reason it was called West Wind Farm. We rarely have an east wind. So when I looked at the app this morning, and when I plan on sitting Friday morning and Friday afternoon, and with that east wind, I'm like, wow, that's going to kind of change my approach of what I'm going to be doing with that east wind. So I was kind of surprised to see that. So, speaking about learning stuff, last year and the year before when I hunted, I didn't look at the wind. No one told me, hey, you need to pay attention to the wind. And then I started hanging out with you guys and hearing you speak of it and watching this and saying, hey, this is something I need to pay attention to. So that's been probably one of my biggest changes in my approach this year, is working that wind, getting a good source of having accurate wind. And then
if you want to be a successful bow hunter, number one thing I was always told is a whitetail's number one defense is its nose.
Yeah.
And your goal, you're never going to beat it 100%. And the best way to beat it is by the wind.
Right.
If they come downwind from you, I don't care how much you descent. I mean, your thermals might help you out some. But if that deer is already alert walking by you, it's very difficult to get them to walk by you without them getting an idea that you're around.
Right.
So if you want to be a successful bow hunter, this all goes back to how Ben puts it, is woodsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely you definitely got to pay attention to when you need to. Your goal bow hunting is to beat that animal's nose.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is how you will be the most successful as a bow hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Playing wind, playing thermals, making sure your scent is under control, your access, your exit, your all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just Ben rolls all that up into one term, and it's called woodsmanship.
Right.
And I like that. I've never heard it called that until I started hanging out with Ben. But yeah, that's what I was told in the beginning of from my uncle, who taught me all about bow hunting.
Mm-hmm.
He says your number one goal is just beat their nose, man.
Yep, you got to put yourself in that wind advantage.
Right.
Yep.
Or on the edge of that advantage where it's just about wrong for you and just about right for him, in a lot of situations and scenarios. But
for him, deer, whatever you're out there trying to get.
Yep. And then the thing with the weather that we can talk about too, like Keith said, it's going to switch around. And I'm sitting here looking at my weather app right in front of me. Had a comment come in. Oh yeah, Bo Hunt says John Eberhardt doesn't watch the wind. Good for John. I've seen some of John's stuff. He kills a lot of deer. No doubt he's a killer for sure. He doesn't, but his scent control routine is about the most anal that I've ever seen for somebody. I don't know if he goes extreme far as eating the chloroform pills and not eating red meat during season, like some guys take it to that extreme with scent control, which is a whole nother animal. But I know John is super cautious of his scent lock and all that stuff. So good for him, but I still gotta hunt the wind. I can't not. If nothing else, understanding the way the deer are going to also use that wind coming into this pre-rut and rut time. The reason you also want to be on the downwind side of a bedding area is not just so you don't blow the bedding area out, but because when that buck's out there maximizing his time on his feet, he's going to want to be on that downwind side of that bedding area, scent checking that bedding area. He wants to be as efficient as possible. He wants to breed, as I guess males as a whole do, want to breed as many females as they can. I mean, just saying, but humans were a little bit different. We're a little bit more monogamous than some species, but with deer, it's all about pass on my genes to as many females as I can. So he's going to maximize his time on the hoof. So also hunting the deer the way they are using the wind can be, for your advantage as well with those situations. Bo says, can you truly predict which way a deer is going to come in? I will say yes, and I will say no to that.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. You can anticipate and plan for and what you expect them to do, but they don't, follow at 110%. I mean, if they did, shoot, I'd be tagged out by now. I think a lot of us would be more tagged out if you can truly predict it.
You can never truly predict what an animal's going to do or where it's going to be unless you actually have a tracking collar on it.
Yeah.
Definitely just what I do, I just go out there and I try and run through my head how I can, optimize what is the most I can do to optimize my chance of being successful. Through past experiences, through knowledge I've gained from friends or different podcasts or TV shows or however I've picked up and retained information, and how other people are successful. And I just try and jumble all that up the best I can, and I make a game plan and I go out and I try to execute it.
Yeah. The way I look at it is I'm a numbers guy. And I think it's all statistics and probability. Anything that I can do to increase the probability of me seeing deer, I'm going to do. And whether it's something I learned from you or YouTube or a TV show, if I think in my gut and from my experience and knowledge that I think that's going to increase the probability of seeing deer in that sit, wherever it is and whatever day it is, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you can't guarantee where they're coming from every time. You may have a pretty good idea, but it's all about increasing that probability, because every time you can increase that probability, even 1 or 2%, that could be that 1% of the time that you're going to see that animal on that specific day or that specific week. So it's nothing's a sure thing. Like I have stands that I sit in that I see on camera where the deer come, and then I go sit out there and they come from a different direction. So of where they come previous. So
yeah,
that's hard, but it's all, to me, it's increasing that probability every way possible.
Yeah. So I would say anticipating is key. And then, there's obviously stands. Every property's got a couple of them. I know we got a couple comments coming in. I just wanted to put kind of my last, thoughts on it with that predicting. I think it comes down to having that stand location that works for the situation you have in front of you. If you can blow it over like that tilled up bean field that's not going to go back out into another crop for whatever reason, if that's where I can blow my wind for a stand on the downside of a bedding area, that's where I'm going to blow it. I'm going to blow it out into a deer free zone, or a wide open, maple beach, woods that's super wide open, tall, mature canopy forest, when I'm sitting on the downwind side of cover. Yes, there's going to be deer through there, but you're kind of anticipating these areas of heavier deer movement versus lighter deer movement and trying to anticipate that for majority, like you said, probability of success with those spots. I think that's when it comes into, can you truly do it? No, nothing's 100%. And even if you do statistics long enough, eventually you're going to get an outlier that doesn't make anything 100%.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I think you can anticipate. And again, it might be that he does come through that finger or that slip of cover that you're watching, but he's the one trail 5 yards too far, or the one you didn't quite get a shooting lane cut to, but he came through there. So that's always part of it too. Or he just doesn't give you a good angle, especially with archery equipment.
Right.
It's just kind of simple. I mean, that's why they call it hunting, not killing.
Yep, there we go.
You
Right
can
back.
predict them 100%. I guess
Doesn't mean you can kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
that's half
Yeah.
the fun, is making the strategy, and
Yeah.
those times that you develop your strategy and you go out and be successful, that's just part of the being, the satisfaction.
It's
Yep.
a joy in it. It's
Yep.
a joy in putting the work in and getting results that you're happy with. And
Mhm.
like for me, I love learning. I really do, and it's fun for me. It's making mistakes. It's learning new things. It's sitting out there and seeing different things every year or even every week, and just learning all these things. Like to me, the wind, that was the biggest thing for me this year.
Mhm.
Was learning how to play the wind and really paying attention to that, and it was eye opening for sure. And it's completely changed the way I do everything with hunting. So it's for people like me, like new people. It's keep an open mind, and the only thing I will say is for people in a situation like me, second year, really full blown whitetail hunting, is get information from good sources. Don't trust every single thing you see on YouTube.
Right.
Vet the sources. Make sure they're good sources.
Good sources.
And make sure that when you try those things that you see, that you really keep track of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and so you can learn yourself. Okay, what they said on YouTube does work, or it doesn't work. But that's kind of been a hard lesson for me. Is it's fun to watch YouTube videos and this, that, and another, but really knowing what to trust is hard at times. So.
Right.
We got a few other comments.
Yeah,
here.
and then Brian also Bryant commented in after Bo's comments. Can you throw all that away once they start chasing? So, I think it changes your stand locations. Early season, rut, pre-rut, and then late season.
I definitely move in closer to the bedding areas during the rut.
Yeah, I'd say I would change my locations.
I definitely wouldn't go sit a stand where the wind, I believe, was blowing my scent right into a bedding area, because that would blow all of the deer in the bedding area out that the buck's coming to, I guess, possibly check. I mean, I would definitely want to be on the downwind side of the bedding area. And I definitely think, when it comes to them chasing, I think the bucks get pretty dumb. Unless that buck's right on that doe's tail and she's just hauling ass through. I think the doe are still pretty in tune with what's going on around them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they got a little more on their mind when they're being chased, but you still got to beat a mature doe. That's a fairly difficult thing to get by.
Mm-hmm.
With scent.
Yeah. So as for, I guess, throwing it all away, I would say no. I would say it more comes down to having those pinches where the woods gets tight between maybe bedding or anything like that. But getting into an area where you can effectively cut off or eliminate all of this area and break it down into this section, whether that's where the habitat gets tighter, whether it's where you have a saddle, or where you have two ridges that come down together, a couple creek bottoms come down into this, bottom funnel, a whole bunch of different things that might, influence
places that you normally wouldn't hunt because they're super intrusive to get to.
Partially, yeah, absolutely.
And then once it gets to be that time of year, you can go into those locations
and
not, be as disruptive. I guess you can, the deer aren't just bedding there, going from bed to food. You might have a deer come by you within 2 hours that came from 5 miles away.
Yeah.
You never really know what is going to happen in the rut. That's what makes it so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would agree. You definitely want to, try and play the wind. Thermals, those optimal topography setups, pinch points and stuff like you were saying. But yeah, I mean, it's all in developing a game plan, no matter what time of year it is,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So I mean, you don't just grab your bow and walk out there and be like, well, I'm just gonna go walk up and see what happens today.
Mhm.
At least in my experience, you always have some kind of plan in the back of your head before you go out. So no,
Yeah,
you can't just throw it all away. I don't think that's how it works.
I would say any pattern, especially right now, any food pattern you have on a mature buck right now, or some bucks in general, whatever deer you're trying to target. I would say once the chasing starts, you can throw that food pattern right out the window, for sure.
Well, chances are that buck's never going to be around.
Not for that food pattern anymore.
You're
no.
probably going to start seeing different bucks coming through.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be off on someone else's piece.
Yep.
That buck that has been hanging around your piece.
Yeah.
You're going to be getting stranger dangers rolling in.
Yep, stranger danger. Different and just different parcel area uses. You might have a deer that's slotted into on, like he said, a hayfield or something like that, and then once that hay, dies off, or you start getting into that rut time, he's going to start seeking more to high stem count, browse heavy. I call it breeding cover, really for deer, because that's what they start gravitating toward, is that heavier cover. And if you're still out there sitting a field edge, no doubt it can happen. A deer can walk by any stand anywhere. It can happen for sure, but consistently to kill, bucks, especially during some of that rut time frame, you need to be sitting on bedding or breeding cover, or a funnel or something between that.
Breeding cover,
yep.
And also incorporating good woodsmanship.
Oh yeah, stand location, everything. It comes always back to stand locations and wind for 100%.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
We're talking a lot about food sources and things like that. What about water? Like we spoke a little bit before the show started here about this pond I'm hunting. I'm seeing a lot of activity there. So is that water source going to be more important as the rut comes on, and these deer are moving more and they need a constant water source because they are moving more and they're running more? Is that going to be something that you might put a little bit more attention to, is that water source as that happens?
I would say if you have a spot that you can hunt effectively around that water, I'm not saying like set up on top of the pond necessarily, but I'm saying if you have like a good narrow band of cover coming to that water source on one side or the other that you can hunt effectively, or where maybe an open hardwoods meets an old overgrown pasture, something like that, that you have two different habitat types coming together by that you're going to have increased deer activity along because of the timing of the year. Yes, they're going to seek out water, during pre-rut and rut when they're chasing, because no matter what, they still have to drink. And they're not eating a lot, and a majority of a deer's water intake is through the plant matter that they ingest. So when they're not eating, hence bucks up on their feet, always chasing and seeking, they're going to have to still seek water because they're not getting that water from the plants.
Right.
So I would say, hunting over the water specifically is putting your eggs kind of all in one basket. I would branch out from that a little bit, maybe in that situation, and see if there's a band of cover, if there's a saddle or an area adjacent to that that's a much more higher volume, higher success kind of stand location adjacent to that. And use that as part of the movement, but don't put all your eggs into the basket of that's what the movement's coming toward. I would almost use that as kind of a supplemental piece to that movement stand.
Well, those saddles and those pinch points, what you're saying is that by hunting them, being adjacent to the water source, the deer is, trying to get to that water source.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hunting those topography features, there you go. Those topography features, you're optimizing your chance of being successful with the deer movement in that area because it is drawing them down within a certain range.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about a pinch point where our woods narrows down, it's funneling the deer down to, let's say you hunt a pinch point that's 100 yards wide and you set your stand up in the middle of it. those deer travel either straight at you or they're going to be 50 yards to your right or 50 yards to your left.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just basically just trying to those topography features that are just, by hunting them, you're just optimizing your chances of being successful within that deer movement there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess touching on a little more of the deer moving towards the water, everything Ben said, I would agree with. I kind of like the whole water thing because in the morning, that water will actually make your thermals rise. And if you actually have a steady wind, that water and the way it works will actually pull your scent up. If you use milkweed,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're hunting near water and you have one of them bluebird mornings, it's cold, it's frosty, and that sun breaks, and you take that, and when everything starts warming up, that's when your thermals will really start pushing up. And you pull that milkweed out and you just kind of let it go. You will actually watch that water will actually, you can see the steam coming off the water.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what it's doing. It'll pull your scent up, and once it gets to a certain point, don't ask me how high it is, but that wind will actually grab that and pull at your scent and actually take it out into a field or, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the evenings, that water, for some reason, don't ask me why, the thermals, but that water, if you do the milkweed in the evening, when things start cooling down, you drop that milkweed, and that milkweed will actually be drawn towards the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your scent's going to go.
Yep.
So by setting stand locations or anything around water, keep that in mind also.
Yep. No, that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so that you see that steam, like Nate said in the morning, that rolling off it's not steam, but the fog coming up off the water. If you see the fog rolling up, it's the same thing in the evening time. You see the fog settling in those lower areas first. Same thing what you're saying, that milkweed and that thermal's pulling down where that air is settling.
And if you're a big evening hunter, more times than not, I see a more mature buck come out in a lower area.
Oh, low corners of fields and stuff? Absolutely.
Because that's where all the scent's getting drawn down to.
Mm-hmm.
And they can pick everything up before they go out in that field.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
So, I mean, we might have got a little off topic of the subject, but I think they're all good points.
No, I think that's
Helping me, so thanks.
Yeah. So I think that really touches on that, throwing it all away. There's just it's just changing gears or going to a different location for your stand or whatever it might be for that. I think is, rather than just throwing it away, you just got to shift gears.
Yep.
Just change your approach a bit.
Yep.
So we got some few other comments here.
Yep. Bo commented in again. He's the top commenter of the night.
Oh,
the
thanks
gold-
for tuning in, man.
The gold star award of the night goes to Bo so far. How long do you think it takes your property to recover if you get a little excited and enter your core area and bump some deer around? So this is something we talked about last podcast. We both bumped some deer on previous hunts, and then got a little excited. And
I did it exactly what you're talking about. I did it.
So what do you think for recovery time? And I think that's part of the reason why you and me have kind of backed off a little bit on this warm stretch, is giving it a little bit of space too.
We got lucky with the warm stretch to give us an excuse to give it a break.
Yep.
I mean, in all honesty.
Yeah, absolutely, that helps.
But I would back out. I mean, probably at least. I guess if it was during the rut and you bumped them, I would go right back to the same spot. Definitely depended on the deer's reaction when I bumped him. I mean, if he just kind of bounded off a little bit and, just kind of got out of sight of me and where he felt he was safe and just continued on with his life, I guess I wouldn't be too concerned. But if I had scared the bejesus out of him and he just bolts out of there 100 miles an hour, I would start getting concerned that I might not see that deer again.
Yeah.
In that area.
Yeah, I think when it comes for property recovery, like Nate said, it all depends on how bad you spook them, or how bad of an intrusion you had to.
It's time of year, because during the rut, I mean, if they're chasing a doe and you kind of bump them and him and the doe kind of split ways, he's eventually just going to go find her again. He's just going to go where the doe goes. You just kind of startle him.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
No.
Me personally, I usually want to give it a couple days.
Yep.
But then I also want to look back on what was my mistake? I mean, sometimes things happen and there's no explanation for it, but
Deer's
you
were,
want,
yeah.
I mean, the deer are going to be some places with no explanation for
A
whatever.
little bit.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, just try and look back on it and try and learn. The reason I bumped and the buck I did, I was getting excited and I was getting a little frustrated with this consistent southeast, southwest wind. I mean, the way my property's laid out that I hunt, I only got a couple stands set up that I guess are, optimal and set up for a south wind. So I got a little antsy and I decided to walk along the edge of this cornfield. And I was walking in on the edge of this cornfield, and then I was going to get to the back corner of the property. And then I was going to cut into the woods, and I was going to go to the northwest corner because we had a southeast wind. And I was going to try and set up my climber over there. I got in there early. I got in there around, 3:30? 3 o'clock. And that was my plan. And I got a little antsy. The corn wasn't off. There's probably about a 20-yard swath between the woods and the corn where the corn didn't grow that well and it was very weedy. And I should have known better with my experience that deer were going to be bedded there. And just so happens, I walked in there and bumped him and he ran across me. But I don't think I bumped him too bad. He bounded into the woods and I think he just went on his merry way and ended up seeing some deer later in the night. But that was kind of my story of that. But I don't think I bumped him off the property. I don't think I scared him to nocturnal. I don't think anything like that. I mean,
no, I've definitely seen, specific deer, like the one I bumped, one I've been calling Hornet, that got bumped the other morning by me. He was back on camera that night. It was after dark, and I saw him that morning walking in gray light. When I bumped him again, he wasn't where I expected him to be, and like you said, can we really truly predict everything? But he was back that night, so he was back within 12 to 14 hours, on the property. So again, I didn't bump him that bad. I didn't anticipate I did, but if you're going through, I'd say like the core bedding areas and bump deer around, that's going to shape some things up. But if you have, like we said, the good woodsmanship and really keying back on that with your access, your entry, exit, you're hunting your wind and you bump some deer, as basically an outlier to normal access activity, that's not as big a deal, I think. If you're hunting smart and hunting it, to the best of your ability with that piece.
I mean, you're not scaring deer every time you go out there. I mean, you're not leaving stuff behind and everything like that. You're just being respectful to the property and the woods. I mean, the deer, they get bumped all the time. I mean, I watched a deer get spooked by a house cat that walked out, the other day. I mean, did that deer actually smell me walking through that corn, or did he just hear me and got nervous and just decided to bound off?
Yeah, well, it was a big mature buck too. So I mean, he's just got one thing that keys him off sight, sound, smell, and he's boop. Yeah. He's not gonna wait around like a fawn will and be like, hey.
Yeah. So I mean, deer get skittish as it is. I think they get spooked all the time, personally. And then they just gather themselves and kind of funnel back in. I mean, I've had it happen before where I walk out onto a field and I accidentally bump. I don't know, there might have been 5-6 deer out there. I bump them off the field and I go climb up in my stand, and I know I'm the reason they left because there's a little rise there and they caught me before I caught them in the field. And then about 2 hours later, right before about 45 minutes, half hour dark, I'm pretty sure it's the same 6 deer that just walk right back out onto the food source.
Right.
As long as after a period of time they just feel comfortable and safe again.
Can I ask a question building on that a little?
Yeah.
So I was, just talking to people, friends and things like that, of you're walking into a stand, morning, evening, doesn't really matter, and you get close to the stand and you bump a deer, and I've had people tell me you might as well just turn around and go out. And I've heard that from multiple people, right? So, and I kept hearing that, so I sat down with Mike and I'm like, hey, what should I do in this situation? And he's like, no way. He's like, go to the stand, sit in the stand. And I've bumped deer, gone to the stand, and just like you said, they came back and he harvested a deer.
Whether it was the same deer that
Yeah.
you bumped, or whether it was just another deer from somewhere else moving into where you were.
Yeah. So last year, the one stand that I shot my buck out of, I bumped deer 3 different occasions going in. Pitch dark, being really quiet, had the wind in my favor, and they were just there.
Mm-hmm.
And funny story is, there was 3 doe near my stand, and I got in my stand. I walked right, didn't use any light, didn't hook my bow up, and I got into the stand with bow in hand, backpack on, and those 2 doe didn't leave my stand for 45 minutes. And the one doe was 15 yards away. And she was stomping me, snorting me. And as soon as I got up in that stand and got settled, she settled. And I could hear her just eating around the stand and, to the north of me, and never left until light came on. And I was like, okay, these people are telling me to just turn around and run. That's not applicable here anyways, so it's interesting to hear you guys say that, because I was always told if you bump them, you might as well just go home.
So a little shout out to Jesse, our buddy Jesse again.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard this term before, and this is years back, a little through the process of the growing pains of learning hunting and everything, and how to be semi-consistently successful, at least trying to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going out with him, and we were just going to go sit in the corner of the field. And we get out there and we bump some deer, and I'm like, I hate bumping deer. He goes, what are you worried about? I go, what do you mean? He goes, we ain't hunting them. We're hunting the deer coming here. He goes, we ain't hunting the deer that are here. We're hunting the deer that are coming here. And it kind of just put a little different perspective in my mind. Obviously, I'm still not big on bumping deer. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But from what you were saying, like when you walk in and you bump a deer, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
There's deer moving the next property over. They might come over, And he goes, don't worry about that. He goes, there's more deer out there. There's going to be deer coming here. There's going to be deer,
Mm-hmm.
And it did kind of put a little different twist in my head about things when I bump deer. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, depends on how the property lays out and stuff like that. Absolutely, they might be coming off an adjacent piece where there's, better bedding coming into a food store or something like that. Absolutely. The deer that are on that piece might not be the ones that you're, hunting in that scenario. So I think there's a lot of credit to that too. Absolutely. And there's spots where, a couple places I can think of where I hunt where the way I access and come around to that spot, I intentionally don't blow my wind also onto a parcel adjacent to that, just because, like you said, I'm anticipating deer movement or deer focus to come from that area, or I'm sitting on the downwind side of a neighbor's bedding area on my side of the line, just because that's the way it lays out. So, it might not be the fact that I'm hunting that, but I'm hunting a relation of that spot, with the way that lays out. So, absolutely.
What's Bo got for us now?
Bo's a big questionnaire of the night, so I do like it, absolutely. So the core area, bump some deer. Next one was, don't use those black containers for a water hole like Jeff Sturgis uses in New York, because my deer won't use it. I have a food plot around it, and you can see the browse line about 3 foot all around the tub. So basically, they're going everywhere but the water hole, the man-made water hole that he saw in a YouTube video.
I've heard of people trying to use them, and they're never really successful. Those black tubs, honestly. I've heard of people making like a, what do you want to call it? Like a woodland pond. Yep. It's not necessarily a pond you want to stock with fish, or it's not like a pond that's gonna stay. Contain water, I guess, all year round.
An ephemeral pond? Yep.
Yeah, but just like a woodland pond.
That's what we have at the property I'm on.
Yep.
And I've heard people being fairly successful with that, but those little those black tubs, like the koi fish ponds that you get out of Grandma's whole flower bed. I really haven't heard much success out of those.
Yeah, so I think the key thing with that is if you are using that to hold water at a source to make it look as natural as possible. You got to bury it below grade. You have to put the work in to make that look as natural as you can with that water source. Keeping it relatively cleaned out of leaves and other debris. Obviously, don't let dead animals get in it, stuff like that.
They get stagnant.
Yep, getting super stagnant. Cleaning it out. So it doesn't get really, really nasty. I haven't used it I haven't used it on any of my personal properties. I have clients that have used it and had success with it. But it's not something I would usually recommend to clients or in most situations. If you get up on super high ridges in the southern tier in some areas like that where there's no water around in the immediate area and that's the only way you can get water to hold on top of a big dry ridge, I could see it having some merit. But we're pretty blessed here, in we're Wayne, Ontario, and Yates County. So we have the Finger Lakes. We have all these.
There's water everywhere.
We have creeks and tributaries, and we have a lot of seasonal ponding areas in our woodlots and swamp woods and stuff like that. There's water availability, so I don't think it's as big a limiting factor where we are.
The food that's available to the deer, a lot of it does hold a lot of moisture, like you were touching on earlier.
Yeah.
And that is where majority of deer get their water.
Yep.
Is through the food they're eating.
100%, for sure. But yeah, but that's, like I said, it could be something where, if they're not getting a lot of use for it, like I said, the pond, the tote or whatever is above grade. I've definitely seen them shy away from that.
I'm a big Jeff Sturgis fan.
Yeah, Jeff does have a lot of great quality content, and I learn a lot of stuff from watching Jeff stuff myself. So
I do watch his videos a lot on lunch.
If you look at
Jeff Sturgis,
if you
he's very successful.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm sure not everything he does is gonna apply to everyone's situation.
100%.
I mean, because definitely probably where he's hunting is going to be different than where you're hunting situation. But what's Bo's next question, Don? What's that last one say?
Bo's last question he messaged in. Don't you guys feel that bucks should be hitting scrapes hard this time of the year? I would say 100%.
Yeah.
Laying down a ton of sign in this late October time frame. I say like October 20 through the first 3 to 4 days of November. After that, it starts to tail off around here a little bit because they're actively seeking and breeding a lot in that time frame. But
I mean, I don't know. You have those rut scrapes that I feel like fade off throughout that time frame you're saying. But then there's those community scrapes. If you can locate a community scrape, you're going to have those bucks on camera all year round.
Yeah. That kind of scrape location that you're having does hit that licking branch in July. Yeah. There's your community scrape.
I mean, there's definitely a difference between scrapes. I don't really know how many differences there are, but from what I can see, definitely there's more scrapes that pop up during the rut. But then there's those scrapes that are there all year round, and I have one or two on a piece, and I have a camera there all year round, and there's deer hitting it all year round, licking it, hanging on it, doing their thing all year round. So I definitely think that there's a little difference in between.
Yeah, I'd say definitely
when the rut's picking up.
Yeah.
To during the summer and late season and everything.
Yeah. So I think the big thing with the scrapes is you're going to see more of the visualness on a scrape, and a lot more visually scrapes popping up, meaning they're pawing the ground. They're working that dirt, they're urinating in it, and peeing all over their tarsals and rubbing it to put fresh scent down, hitting licking branches. Yep, some rub lines, stuff like that. They're laying down a lot of sign and a lot of scent in the areas that they're frequenting, and typically a lot of areas that are high in doe numbers too. They're also letting the does know what's going on in that area with their exactly. So yeah, I think they're laying down a ton of scrape sign right now. I've never been a huge I guess I'll put it this way. I've never been a huge rub line hunter or a scrape line hunter specifically. I'm more going to look for features like topography and habitat types rather than a string of sign of like rubs or scrapes. But with that being said, just about every one of my stand locations, if not all of them, there's only probably one or two I can think of that don't have a mock scrape at that stand location.
Bo, if you're signing off, man, thanks for the comments.
Yeah, and good luck
Yeah,
this
thanks.
season.
Yeah, good luck to you.
Absolutely, man. Love the conversation tonight.
Great questions you were
Yep.
up. That was awesome.
100% with it. So actually, we'll tune over to the YouTube. Must be Derek hasn't been tuning in.
He's hunting.
Yeah, he is
He's
probably.
in like he's probably 500 yards off the map, or 500 miles off the map. Just
Yep, backcountry.
500
Elk
yards.
muley.
Bow season, 500 yards. Yeah, I got to drive to my job about 500,000 yards tomorrow. You know,
Yep.
That's fun.
everything's yards right now.
Yeah, no kidding. but yeah, so
But that was the first time Bo I had made some comments.
yeah, you'd been in once or twice before,
he?
but definitely his top commenter of the night, 100%.
Cool.
But
That's
yeah,
fun.
all good comments. Good comments.
You guys are teaching me a lot, so thank you.
No, that's
I
what it's
appreciate it.
what it's all about.
I'm
And
glad we're helping you out. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
for
whole
sure.
point in doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Really, is the
Absolutely.
people that want to learn more. Is hopefully we can give them a little insight, or if they're already smarter than us, then
we
good for
love
them.
their
Hopefully they can call us and give us some insight.
Yeah.
Help
Yeah.
me out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but I guess another thing that came up this past week when I was hunting, I think it was Sunday morning. A buddy of mine that I know, he shot a good buck, and I guess this comes down to a couple things. If you're not sure of the shot, back out. The immediate first thing is if you don't know 100%, or if you didn't make the less than ideal shot, the first thing you should do is back out of the situation if at all possible. That's just going to help you successfully recover that animal. If you go pushing them, I mean, you can push them to the ends of the earth, for a lot of deer. But he made a shot, less than ideal shot for sure. And knew he hit the deer back, and couldn't get a tracking dog out there because of the weekend. Obviously, more hunters in the field, more tracking dogs needed. So he asked me what my thoughts were, and I said, well, he said, but the deer was quartering away. And I said, okay, so with that situation that you kind of painted for me there, that's the thing. When you sit next to the fridge, you're the tap guy.
That's okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, man.
I don't
No, that's good. So I told him, I said, being a quartering away shot, I said, because he's like, I definitely hit liver and guts. And I was like, well,
I might have got a little foam, sorry.
I said, if you got that quartering away angle and you punch that diaphragm, I said, I would give it 6 hours no matter what, 6 to 8, I told him. And I said, and then, I would maybe go 80 to 100 yards, track, and see what you come up with. Because I said, if you punch diaphragm, the deer, if you don't push him or bump him, and he can lay down and, basically his lungs can't make compression with that diaphragm punched, the deer's going to be dead within 100 yards of your stand. I think it's more of a lethal shot than a heart shot in most cases, because no matter what, you can't make pressure in the lungs, you can't breathe, stuff can't make the world go around. And long story short, he waited his 6.5 hours, I think is what he waited, went right in there, and the deer died 40 yards after the shot. Punched the diaphragm. Hit gut, and then hit the bottom lung on the exit, and punched that diaphragm, and that's where the deer was laying. And he's like, well, the deer was dead. And I was like, well, I know, but I said, if he, for whatever reason, I've seen him also slink off on just a straight liver hit and not punch diaphragm and go lay up. And I've seen deer lay up for, over an hour or two from the stand. And I know it's a liver hit because it would have expired by then, if I had punched diaphragm. That was with a doe I shot a couple years ago. I ended up having to get down and make another shot on her. But yeah, I think that's huge for people is, You know, and when everybody says good blood, I mean, good blood, I think, is relative for a lot of people. If you get a muscle hit or an angled hit or an entry or exit on a deer, it can seem like a lot more blood than it really is, you know, for the type of hit that it is, too.
And then, you know, try and keep yourself. I know it's hard.
Yeah.
But try, and if you're up in the stand and you make a shot at an animal, and I've noticed this with quite a few guys, and it's something I had to learn, is after you make that shot, find a landmark where that deer was standing when you shot it. So when you get out of that stand, you're like, okay, there's that big oak tree. It was like 50 yards behind it. You know, just walk in that direction. Because when you're up in the stand, 15, 20 feet, 25 feet, however high you hunt, when you get back down on the ground, everything looks a little different, and it's a little hard to find that. And I don't know how many times I've done that, and I had to climb back up on my stand,
Where you find a
and
landmark.
be like, okay, that's where he or she was. All right, now there it is. Now you're refinding your landmark. You're getting down. You know, it's almost like after you shoot an animal, you know, just try and have a little routine behind it. It'll help you out a lot. Try and find a landmark. Go over and find first blood, mark first blood. Definitely try and enjoy the moment. Obviously, you're all amped up and everything, but I think people might make actually quite a few good shots on deer that I think they might have missed out on, you know, because they just missed out on actually they were looking in the wrong location, or they didn't take that time to, find the landmark. Okay, that's where he or she was standing, and you move, and just replaying it through your head. And I don't know. It was just a little topic.
Yeah. And I mean, but at the same time too, I mean, and like I said, there's a million different scenarios in this world. And I mean, I've seen quite a few of them, and I'm sure I haven't seen all of them. I'm sure I'll see a couple more in my day that just perplexed me. I mean, Baby 10 was one that perplexed me. I still don't know where I hit that deer because of when we found him, but that deer perplexed me. I mean, that was...
He could have been alive, circled back around.
We found
him, months later?
A couple months later.
We were shed hunting.
Yeah, we were shed season when we found him. Yep.
Yeah.
And then, I've had deer that, like Outlaw, I shot him the year before. He turned into the shot, hit him just in front of the shoulder, hit the lung on the way out, and the deer survived all year on basically like I call it one lung, but 1.5 lungs. His lung had all shriveled up to about the size of a softball and stuck to the inside of his rib cage where I'd hit him the year before. Yeah, and the deer ran around all year. I mean, the deer are
tough.
Their will to survive is unbelievable.
100 times more than a human.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, it's insane what they'll go through. One of the deer we're after this year, bottom 9, he was shot by a neighbor last year, less than fatal shot. He looked horrible when I saw him limping around. I couldn't get an arrow in him during bow season, and then never saw him during gun. But he's back this year, and he looks like nothing ever happened to him. You know what I mean? And you just never know. But I think a big thing for people is the landmark is a huge thing. Is after you focus on making your shot, is watching how that deer reacts, and it comes with shooting deer. I mean, this isn't something you're going to get with the first deer that you shoot. The more you
pick a landmark, and then if you shot a deer in the area and you're very confident that was roughly where that deer was standing. I mean, I've shot deer and killed deer, and I haven't found blood for 30 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I found a landmark. I composed myself after the shot. Obviously, it's exciting. I get down. I go over. I find the rough area, generally pretty close where she was. And if you can't find immediate blood, or it wasn't obvious where he or she was standing, small circles, and then just kind of build yourself out a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And, if that spot doesn't have a specific landmark, where you start your circles, because you might be off 10 yards where you think that deer was standing, especially with a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You crack a
You
deer
get out 30, 40
yards.
Oh, yeah.
And then you walk out 150 yards and you think that deer was standing right there. Well, you might be off about 20 yards from where that deer was standing. And that's where them small circles start coming into play. Take a stick and stick it in the ground, or a rock or something you can see out in the field or something. And you know that that's where you're starting and you're building off of it. And you can just eventually, if you did hit the animal or make a good shot, you will eventually come across blood.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something that's personal preference of mine. I know a lot of guys, and having been called out to help people track and stuff before too, a lot of people, like you said, won't look for that landmark where they shot. They will look.
I think a lot of deer get lost that way. That's what I was trying to get at earlier.
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge part of it, is finding legitimate first blood from the shot, compared to, I saw him going to that trail. And like you said, you get out there, that deer might be 40 yards from where you shot him, where he went on that trail. And a lot of people want to pick up the track there. I want my blood to be here, and I want to follow it to that trail and be like, yep, I'm verified. I don't want to go to that trail, because then you go there and it's just like, I thought he went in this trail. Blood doesn't lie. The blood's going to lead you to the deer every time.
So a funny thing I do that might seem weird, but I'm a surveyor, so I deal with my world is in direction and distance, right? So I wear a Garmin Instinct, and it has a compass on it that I use all the time at work. So like if I'm in a tree stand and I have that deer, I will hit my compass and I will get a compass bearing on where that deer was.
Next level.
Right.
I like it.
So, I mean, if you understand a compass, an azimuth compass, it's 360 degrees. So when you're in the stand and you point that compass to where that deer was, and then you get out in the field and you're looking back at your stand, you got to add or subtract 180 degrees to that. But you will get a general area.
Me being a machinist, I understand all of this.
Right, but you get a general idea of the direction. You might not know the distance exactly, like you said with gun, but you can get that direction really accurately, to the minute, to the single degree of where you should be relative to your stand. So if you have that tool in your toolbox, use it. I don't wear my watch during bow season, but I usually keep it on.
Technology to your advantage. I mean, that's
for sure.
That's a good.
Yeah, I've never heard of referencing off a compass ever in anything that I've listened to, but I think that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It'll definitely. I think that would definitely get you close in that direction.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like I said, I almost find myself. I mean, obviously, you make a shot, you watch reaction, you watch where the deer goes, the deer reacts, etc. So you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Listen for a minute, 2 minutes, whatever, for any immediate sounds, crashing, anything like that. Obviously,
a lot to soak in when you're all amped up. After
oh, I know it is.
Pull that trigger,
and again, and
release that arrow. Or there's a lot of emotions going through,
and it all happens in the blink of an eye. And literally,
it definitely gets easier with more experience.
Yeah,
you can start to pick it apart and layer it out.
The more animals you take, I think it definitely gets easier. But that feeling never 100% goes away, and it's almost like when you shoot your first deer, we're all just chasing that experience again.
Yep.
It's because it's never the same after the first one. Just not quite. I mean, maybe a big buck, your first big buck or something, or however your hunting career has laid out for you. Maybe your first deer was a big buck, but it's definitely what we're all out there doing it for, is that little bit of adrenaline, that excitement, that
challenge, the chest mash, everything coming together,
the success, and then the non-success, learning from it.
Yeah, for sure. Like that experience I was telling you guys about. I mean, it's all in learning and what not to do next time, or how you would change things. Where I think, like, just to touch a little bit more, what you're talking about is the hunt doesn't end after you pull the trigger or let that arrow fly, and keeping your composure
That's when the real work starts.
Yeah, but like
is after you pull that trigger.
taking that deep breath and taking that 30 seconds to calm down and process what just happened, good, bad, or indifferent, and keeping a level head of what's going on and what you should do. Like when I took that buck last year, the first deer with a bow and first buck ever, and it was 15 yards, and I was so excited, and it just overwhelmed everything that I didn't know if it was a good shot. Like, I truly did not know because I was just so in the moment. And
then you also have that little bit of lack of experience with it.
Lack of confidence, for sure, like you're talking about.
Confidence. It's something new.
Yep. So I got out of the stand. I knew where he was because it was, like I said, it was 15 yards from my stand, and I found the arrow. I looked at the arrow. I didn't have a lot of experience looking at blood at an arrow, so I took some pictures of it to show other people. It's like, hey, what do you think? But I got my bow, and I went home. I had lunch. I called my neighbor and said, hey, I sent him the picture. Hey, what do you think? And I went back 3 hours later, and he was dead 75 yards from the stand. But like hindsight 2020, not having that experience and not having that confidence, I'm really glad I made that decision to get out. Because if it wouldn't have been a good shot, and I just immediately with that adrenaline just started, trying to chase, where would that have gone? So
pushed him onto a piece that you weren't allowed on.
Right.
Like the neighbor.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of your neighbors there is a pretty avid hunter, and he's probably not going to want you walking all over his ground chasing a wounded animal.
Yeah.
Because that's going to play a factor in his game.
Yeah. So I was just really, like, out of the things I learned was if I personally, and I'm not quite sure, I don't have that absolute certainty it was a good shot and executed that shot of I'm getting out of there.
I think
I'm letting that lay and going back in afterwards.
I definitely think you did the right thing. That was actually kind of a very mature move for someone as new as you, because I was not that way when I started. I shot that animal, and I wanted to track that thing until I had my hands on it. And sometimes it worked out, and sometimes you just push them too far, and it wasn't the shot that you thought you made.
Yeah.
And it's just all part of the learning curve.
One thing that's funny for me is everyone talks about, like, growing up, everyone's like buck fever, we get buck fever. And when I was out in the stand last year, the first sit I had, it was 68 degrees out. I'll never forget it. And I saw 11 doe. It was 68 degrees. It was my first sit in a stand with my new bow. Didn't know jack, right? And I'm seeing all these deer, and I'm freaking out. Like, heart rate's up, right?
How far away were they?
45 yards.
All right, so they were fairly close.
But for my ability, it was like they're 5 miles away, right? At the time.
Oh, yeah. For archery equipment, yeah.
45 yards is a pretty good poke for even
but I was freaking out, right? I'm freaking out. Like, I'm seeing 11 deer in one night. Like, I've never experienced anything like this, and I'm super excited, right? And then that buck out in front of me, and my heart rate didn't go up. I didn't flinch during the shot, like up to the shot, during the shot. It was the weirdest thing. It was like this calm came over me, and I'm like, I have to take this deer. It's right in front of me. And then as soon as I heard that arrow hit that animal, it was like all bets are off.
You came unglued.
Yeah, I was like shaking about, about to go out of the stand. You're so excited, and
It definitely happens different for everybody.
Yeah,
I gotta say, for me, it's different. I mean, there's times where I'll get amped up. I mean, even now with just even a doe it. I mean, there's certain times. Sometimes it doesn't even bother me. And then there's other times it's I don't know. It's just my mental state at that point or what it is. But sometimes I just get amped up with it. Just a deer, not even a big buck or anything that I'm even wanting to shoot. I just get excited about that deer being there.
No, like. I harvested a couple does last year, put a couple in the freezer, obviously, but I came unglued that that video I have of passing mowing the timber last year. After I turned the camera off, dude, if you had been watching me in the tree with a camera, you would think that I just killed that deer. For whatever reason, after that came in, I was calm, videoed him, he walked through with a doe, and I was committed that I was going to let that deer slide in that situation. As soon as I put the phone away, dude, it all hit me like a ton of bricks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a complete adrenaline straight dump. And I find my way getting that way a lot about passing some of these deer and just watching them do what they do. And you getting amped up, watching deer be deer in a lot of situations. And then obviously, I mean, nothing like that adrenaline dump. I had a video I put on YouTube a couple years ago where I, couldn't even make out the word "Sweet November" when I was freaking after making the shot on Bud, because I was just that amped up after I was able to put my arrow in him. But yeah, it's all situational. I think sometimes it hits really hard when you harvest, and other times it hits really hard. Like I said, when I let Mo go last year, it just, for whatever reason, I just had an adrenaline dump release with that deer last year. But
That's part of the enjoyment too, though, is not
Oh,
only
yeah.
harvesting, but like you said, getting to see them be deer and be that close within bow range, and to be able to observe what they're doing and to see things that most people don't see. Most people, they see the deer in the field when they drive by in their car, and they don't get to see what we get to see in the woods. And that's, for me, that's half the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Being in the woods and seeing those things. And
Maybe this will be the year I get to see one mounted doe. Haven't seen it yet. I've seen a lot of things, but that's one of them I haven't seen yet.
What it puts into perspective, everyone gets in their routine every day, going to work, being with family, whatever else people have going on in their lives. But you get that little bit of time to sit in the stand and just maybe do a little reflection, or just watch, even if you don't see a deer. I mean, just watching wildlife, squirrels, raccoons, fox, whatever comes through, kind of puts into perspective, while you're doing your everyday life, that's not the only thing going on in the world every day. I mean, those animals are out there doing their thing, even though you're living your life on the regular. They're still doing their thing, While you're at work, they're out there doing something. I mean, you may not think about it, but they're there. They got a life. They're out there doing it. And it kind of puts a little perspective into, at least that kind of hit me this year a little bit, sitting there.
Yeah. No, 100%. Watching the world go around, dude. Like he said, and a lot of stuff that people don't get to see. I mean, like watching an owl hunt squirrels the other day.
There's so much that goes on in the world that you don't even think about until you see something. And you're like, that goes on all the time out here. And,
You got to see it this time.
Yeah. I'm in my routine. I'm living my life. I don't even think about it.
Yeah, Sunday morning, I had I don't know birds, but I had an owl land in a beech tree, eye level, 10 feet from me. I've never seen a live owl in my life, other than in a zoo. So for me, that was like, I mean, yeah, I didn't see a deer that morning, but to have an owl that close to me and look right at me and not know I was there, that was really cool. And hunting gave me that experience. I didn't get a deer that year, that sit and didn't see anything, but just having those experiences, there's a lot more to hunting than harvesting an animal. It's getting out in the woods, enjoying the nature. For me, it's a decompression.
Yep.
I got into hunting during COVID when things were crazy and not in a good way, and things were stressful. And for me to go out and be able to spend 3 to 4 hours sitting in a stand was my escape. And honestly, it made me a happier person. It made it so much more enjoyable to get away from the politics and the crap and just everything that was going on around in our area, in my life and work. And it's so enjoyable, even if you don't get that animal you've been looking for all year.
I think that's why the majority of us do it, honestly.
Yeah.
For sure. So
I think that's a great point to end on tonight. I know we like to keep these probably between an hour and a half and 2 hours, and I think that spiritual tie back.
Yeah, no.
We are at minute 40, coming up on an hour. Well, the minute 40, hour 40, for the time tonight. So pretty solid episode. A lot of good conversation, a lot of good topics. And if you are listening to this episode and for whatever reason you don't hunt, feel free to reach out. If you are a first time or relatively new hunter, we'd be happy to help you with any of your questions, anything you might have with that. Love getting people out there to be able to experience some of this stuff we're talking about, as it relates to all this. So
all we can do is tell you what works for us and what didn't, and hopefully it applies to your game. If it,
yeah,
we're not guaranteeing you everything
Nope.
we say is going to work, but these are things that have worked for us.
Yeah, or things that didn't work.
Yeah.
And we're learning with it. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank Keith for stopping by. I know he'll probably be on in a future episode at some point.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're here at the Skin and Shed again tonight. And, with this cold front, we'll probably be, maybe we'll do a live video of the deer hanging this weekend.
I think there's a pretty good chance of it.
That'd be
I
cool.
think with the cold front, dude, it's already dropped like 10 degrees since we've done this podcast. We got the door open and it feels chilly,
cool.
So I know they're talking 40s in the morning, but the next 3 mornings after that, Friday, Saturday, Sunday being low 30s, I'm going to be parking my butt in a tree. I'm going to be parking my butt in a tree tomorrow too, but I got high hopes for the sits coming up, so.
Yep, definitely past 4 days.
But yeah, so tune in next week for Whitetails and Whiskey. We'll do it again, 7:30, as long as we're not out blood trailing. But it looks like we'll be on 70-degree weather again, so probably not. But
Maybe.
Whatever event we're doing,
You never know. You can't kill them from the couch.
Nope, that's true. And next Wednesday, 7:30, we'll bring you another episode of Whitetails and Whiskey. Thank you all for tuning in. Catch you all next time. Live. See ya.